In our mock draft, as all the other 8 previous mock drafts have been brought to you by the NFL Mock Draft Database, a wonderful website if you want to go there. Denny's got, I think, over 900 mock drafts put in there now. He's really grinding, really getting a lot of good mock drafts in there so you can really get a good consensus feel about how people are feeling. And there's people more tuned in to the league than us that have mock drafts in there. Daniel Jeremiah, Matt Miller, all those mock drafts funnel into the NFL mock draft database. He collects that data and puts it into some really cool things like consensus big boards, consensus mock drafts. We'll even sort it out by team. Who do the experts have the Chiefs taking, overall? And there's a lot of mock drafts that don't agree on who the Chiefs are going to take, but they do have a consensus pick there for each team. If you can go through and look at that, they've got team specific mock drafts. You can find our mock drafts on the Chiefs team specific. Ooh, that was a tough word to say. The Chiefs team specific. I tripped over myself again, but you know what I'm saying. But you can find our mock drafts there. There's a ton of good material there, and especially I know Jordan, you've been grinding on this 100 for 100 series. You're on what, almost day 80 now at this point, and you've been looking at the NFL mock draft database too, and one of their cool tools they have with individual players.
Yeah, and I bring it up every time. It's that chart. I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love the chart. I love you can click on the player and it'll give you a history of where they've been in rankings. So then I can look at a guy like Paris Ford and say, well, back in the beginning, I graded him late second round. It wasn't that bad of a grade because he was a late second round on the board. And now he's slipped into the third, fourth, fifth range or undrafted for a lot of teams. So it gives you a clear indication of, it allows me to cover my tracks a little bit and go back and adjust those grades depending on athletic testing. That's one of the difficulties with doing stuff so early in the process is that you don't have really a lot to go off of besides tape. But it's a fantastic tool, and I think everybody should be going over there and using it and sending it out. Hashtag RTKMock. We haven't got a lot of RTK challenges. I think that life has been
No.
challenging enough for that. So RTK mock and tweet it out and tag me and Tucker.
That's fair. I think that we've seen a decrease in those. That's fine because we've been getting plenty of roughing the kicker mock drafts. Last week we did a roughing the kicker mock draft little episode best of RTK mock on Twitter. We got to go in there, talk about our best picks, talk about some players we hadn't really gotten to talk about yet. So that's always really fun. Next week we'll be doing that as well. So let's get into this mock draft here. We're going to be selecting as the Chiefs for the 2021 draft. 7 rounds. We're doing the pre-draft order, normal speed, realistic, recommended setting, and strict trading. I'm going to go ahead and start the draft, and I'm going to tell you what this week's scenario is, because we like to do this where we have a scenario kind of heading into the draft of, okay, what mindset should we be in when this draft is going on? This is what we have for this week. The Chiefs are signing Alejandro Villanueva to a 2-year deal to be their left tackle for the next 2 years in Kansas City. AJ Bouye, cornerback, and Kenny Stills, a wide receiver, to 1-year deals to play those respective positions in Kansas City. So if you're really keeping track at home, that leaves edge kind of as a big question mark for the Chiefs. And that's really the last big need, I think I would say, that this leaves us with.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're kind of waiting for the board to fall, I was doing a simulation mock. I guess I'm still currently doing it with the fantasy football clinic. And dude, Jalen Phillips fell to 31, and I was in disbelief. Like if that happened in this mock draft, I would go absolutely insane. Like the live reaction would be wild. But the board is just weird sometimes, and that was one of those instances. So hopefully we can get something cool going on here.
I'll give you a rundown of the last few picks before the Chiefs selected at 31. At 30, you had Kadarius Toney going to the Bills. 29, Christian Barmore to the Packers. Aziz Ojolari to the Saints. Trevon Moehrig Woodard at 27 to the Ravens. Greg Newsome at 26 to the Browns. Samuel Cosmi at 25 to the Jaguars. Najee Harris at 24 to the Steelers. The Jets take Jalen Phillips at 23. Tevin Jenkins at 22, Rashad Bateman at 21, Gregory Rousseau at 20 to the Bears. Let's see, any other ones of interest? Elijah Vera Tucker at 17. Man, I've seen him mocked to the Raiders a lot, and that kind of worries me a little bit because he's going to be good. Christian Darrisaw all the way down to the Chargers. My goodness, another good offensive lineman finding their way into the AFC West. They could be a really good offensive line in Los Angeles, and they're doing it the right way, man. They're building up that offensive line in LA, and they're going to really build it around Justin Herbert. So let's look at the board. Overall, this is who we have, Jordan. We got Zaven Collins there. You guys know our feelings about linebackers at 31. Jason Oweh is there. Travis Etienne, another running back. Jalen Mayfield, Terrence Marshall, Rondale Moore, Nick Bolton, Joseph Asai, Alex Leatherwood, Landon Dickerson, Wyatt Davis, Elijah Moore, Liam Eichenberg, Asante Samuel, Levi Onwuzurike. So, any of those, Jordan, right now, the question I ask you every week, any of those make you say, okay, hang on, let's take them right here?
I've kind of had a come to Jesus moment recently. I don't really care for Jason Oweh. I don't love his production in college, but his athletic tools are insane, dude. Like, he is a very, very rare athlete. And I think with what the Chiefs have now, there aren't a lot of rookies who are going to step in and be their every down edge rusher this year. They're going to have a guy like Mike Dana or Chris Jones on early downs, and they're going to kind of concede to a guy like Taco Charlton on late downs. And I think that Jason Oweh, he's a guy that you could rotate in with Taco Charlton on third down and just let him put his head down and brush, gain a little bit of weight, learn how to set a quality edge, take over a year from now as a premier edge rusher. I think I'm going to say Oweh would get my pick. And if you would have asked me that even 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have said, no way. I'd never take no way Oweh in the first round. But man, considering just looking ahead, I mean, it's so hard to find an elite athlete later in the draft at that edge position. And he is as good as they come. I mean, him and Jalen Phillips are both absolutely insane.
You're really right. And if you would have asked me a couple days ago, I might have still said no way Oweh, right? I mean, I think that's just how far we've come around on Jason Oweh. 6'5", 253, a little bit on the lighter side, but I think he has long arms too. So that doesn't quite tick off, the Spags prototype, but neither did Mike Dana. And I think that Jason Oweh here, especially if you already have a left tackle in Alejandro Villanueva, especially if he signs a 2-year deal, I don't think you can really go wrong here because, yeah, as you mentioned, he's a really good athlete. I think he tested out of his mind at the Penn State Pro Day, but then again at Penn State Pro Day, who didn't test out of their mind? So that's something, again, you got to take with a grain of salt. But I think Jason Oweh might be the pick here. I think that for me, too, I've been kind of experimenting with these mock drafts, how the board will fall if we select different guys. I like how the board falls if you select Jason Oweh here. So what do you say? Let's just do it?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Jason Oweh at number 31 overall. The first time you were listening to the very first podcast where we have taken someone other than an offensive lineman at 31 overall.
Yeah, it was kind of a tough trend to buck and do something different. But, man, the likelihood of the Chiefs taking a non-offensive tackle or non-offensive lineman in the draft, it's legitimate. Like, no one knows what their plan is besides the Chiefs. So getting a player like Oweh who has as high of a ceiling as anyone really in that edge class, I think is a pretty damn good pick.
Yeah, and you mentioned his ceiling is there, and he's a guy that I don't think a ton of pressure will be put on him right away to produce a whole lot because he will be probably more rotational. And if you do, lean on him with Taco Charlton, you have Mike Dana on the other side to kind of give, Frank Clark's a break because, he's human too. He's going to need a break. Those guys need rotational guys. Even the studs do. And that's kind of the same thing when we talk about Jerron Reed. We talk about, hey, maybe he can give Chris Jones a little bit of a breather because he didn't get very much of a breather last year. And that'll help him stay fresh, especially with an extra game added on this season. All that's really important. So when we look at 63, what's your mindset here positionally? Because I think there's a lot open now here.
I think we just look at the board. I think tackle is something you could look at. I think wide receiver is something you could look at. Cornerback, safety, linebacker. Man, I think that really it's best player available, especially considering Villanueva is going to be there for 2 years. Yeah. The need for an early tackle isn't as pressing. The deeper you go in the draft, the less you're really looking for a day one player. So I think that really anything goes here.
So looking at just the top players available here in the second round at pick number 63, you have Javon Holland from Oregon, Richie Grant, UCF for safety. Both of those guys are safeties. Baron Browning, linebacker from Ohio State. Brevin Jordan, a tight end from Miami who's gotten some decent amount of hype. Could be a fun little tight end 2 combo. Jackson Carman out there from Clemson, the offensive tackle. Dylan Moses, a linebacker from Alabama. Kelvin Joseph, cornerback from Kentucky. Andre Cisco, safety from Syracuse. Tylan Wallace, wide receiver, Oklahoma State. Lim McNeil, a guy I know that you've done a 100 and 100 about. That not a lot of people are talking about. He's there at as a defensive lineman from NC State, and Quinn Miners, interior offensive lineman from Wisconsin Whitewater. All there. Any of those guys, as I was talking, you said, yep, that's it. Let's just go ahead and go. Let's not look anywhere else.
My early vote goes to Richie Grant. I think
Okay.
he does a little bit of everything. He's a good playmaker. He fits kind of the Chiefs mentality and what they like to do. And I scouted him really, really early. So it's been a minute since he's done any like workouts, athletic testing or anything since then. But I really like Richie Grant. He just makes plays. Like he's a Trevon Moehrig type. He's just where he's supposed to be. He just makes plays, kind of like Paris Ford too. Just guys that it's hard to explain, but he just goes out and does what he's supposed to do. So he gets my vote. Let's take a look at the cornerback board maybe and see who's there.
Yeah. Kelvin Joseph is the top-rated cornerback there at 69. And then Paulson Adebayo from Stanford at 96. Sean Wade, and then Trill Williams. Benjamin St. Justice is there as well, who I think will be there later on. So will Trill. I'm not too big on any of those corners that are there right now.
Yeah, I'm not either. Let's, I guess, go to, do we look at wideout or do we do linebacker? Or do we go, I don't know. Really anything goes here.
I do think anything goes here. Baron Browning, Dylan Moses, Chaz Surratt, Cameron McGrone are your top 4 linebackers available. None of those really tipped the needle for me at 63. Now, if Jabril Cox would have fallen to 63, I think that's kind of one where you go, okay, yes, that's who we need to take right here. That doesn't really do it for me. Looking at wide receivers, Tylan Wallace, Amari Rogers, Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell. Those are your top 4 receivers. Again, there's been a run on receivers lately, and I was telling you this before we started the podcast of, Amunra and Diami are going like before the Chiefs pick. And, Diami just went at 62 to the Packers. Amunra went at 60 to the Saints. So, I mean, there's guys out here that are going. Maybe interior-wise, Quinn Miners is a guy you think about taking. Jackson Carman, Walker Little, Brady Christensen, James Hudson, Spencer Brown, Deontay Smith, all guys there. You look at tight end, Brevin Jordan might be an interesting option too. I know we went defense in that first pick there. It could be fun. Brevin Jordan could be a fun little 1-2 punch, but Tommy Trimble will be there in the 3rd round likely, but you probably want to spend your 3rd round pick if you don't spend your 2nd round pick on a tackle. So there's just a lot to think about here.
Yeah, and are we going where we can go offensive line with the 2nd pick, or are we banning ourselves from that?
You know what? Let's not take a tackle. No, I guess we can, because we took an offensive or a defensive lineman 1st round. Right?
Okay.
A little behind the curtain there. Jordan and I were debating if we wanted to just ditch the trenches for the first 2 rounds. But taking Oweh, I kind of forgot that we were going to try to do that. But taking Oweh there, especially when Newsome didn't fall and when Moehrig didn't fall, I think that you kind of had to there. So that kind of forced our hand. I'm trying to look up Richie Grant's pro day results, because I think he actually had a pretty decent pro day. If I remember right here, I'm pulling up his RAS score right now, if my internet will allow me to. You know how Spectrum goes. 7.8 was his score. I thought he had a better score than that.
That's not bad.
It's not terrible. No, it's not terrible at all. But I thought it was. I think green is like considered elite, is what it is, right? But I thought that it was a little bit different than that. But I guess, what kind of safety is he?
He's a free safety that can do a little bit of everything. Like he can play in the slot if he really had to also.
So would you rather have Richie Grant over maybe Brevin Jordan? I think those are the kind of the two options right now.
Yeah, I think I would. I would go Richie or Jackson Carman personally. Those would be my 2. I think Carman, I think he's a top 75 player, so it's not really a reach. He's one of those where you try out at tackle and then you move to guard. He has short arms. I think they're like 32 and a 4th, but he has like the strongest hands in this tackle class, like probably top 2 or top 3. Like he's a really powerful dude. So I think that he'd be worth a shot, and he also isn't ready to play yet, I think. So sitting for a year would be beneficial to him, and if that doesn't work, he'd be an even better guard. So I'm open to either. I'm going to let you decide between Richie and Carmen if that's okay.
Yeah, Jackson Carman has 32.5 inches
Okay.
inch arms, which the 2021 top 20 tackle average, according to Kent Swanson here, is 33.5. So he is a full inch under the average and a full 3 inches under where Andy Reid likes his tackles to go. And I know a guy that we can get at tackle is Deontay Smith. He's got really long arms. I don't want to
Spencer Brown too.
Spencer Brown. I don't want to hinge our decisions right just on arms, right? But I think that if you're in the minds of the Chiefs, and especially if you can get Smith down a little ways, I don't think it'd be bad. Maybe I think I'm talking myself into Jackson Carman here, but I think Brevin. Okay, this is what we should do. Okay, Jordan, you ready?
Yeah.
This is my plan here. Go Jackson Carman at 63, and then at 94, if he's still there, Tommy Tremble.
Actually, while you were talking about the offensive line depth, I'm now Team Richie Grant at 63 and then going with Tommy Tremble at 94.
And then Tommy Tremble, and then look for Brown?
As Spencer Brown or,
Yeah.
Either of the Browns. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, Richie Grant at 63 overall. He's slotted at 59, and I've always liked Richie Grant. That was one of the first people that you scouted, and I looked at and I watched, and I was like, oh, I like this guy. And for me, I've liked Richie Grant more than I like Paris Ford. I know you like Paris Ford more, but Richie Grant's one of those guys that he's a good football player, and I think he'd fit well in the Chiefs system.
Yeah, I think so too. He kind of allows other guys to do some other stuff. He's really switchable. He can do a bunch of different things. He's a playmaker. He's not really undersized. He's a decent athlete, so I think he'd be a pretty good player.
Man, Tommy Tremble is gone. That is absolutely rude of that to happen. Let's see. Where did he go? He must have went very quick because I missed it. Oh, yeah, it's 70. So he went very quick after we selected Richie Grant there. So I guess back to the drawing board. You don't have a tackle yet. Spencer Brown, Deontay Smith, both there. We are picking at number 94. Maybe you look at wide receiver, Dwayne Eskridge. But man, this wide receiver class is so deep because Josh Palmer at 131 here is probably going to fall to us, and I really like that pick. I really like Josh Palmer. Amir Smith-Marset, another guy that I really like, Josh Matterbaby, Tamori Terry. There's all kinds of guys that will fall to us for wide receiver. So I'm not really worried about wide receiver personally, but what are you thinking here, Jordan?
I'm thinking Spencer Brown. I'm literally writing him on my sheet right now. I think that he's so athletic. He has the size. He was a right tackle at Northern Iowa. I think he could handle the transition because really I think it's an athlete's transition. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say. I think really the main thing that you worry about with the right tackle moving to left tackle, it's not like a technique adjustment per se, more so of an athleticism one. Like Brian Kelly said, Liam Eichenberg, I don't know if he's left tackle because of that lack of elite level athleticism. Spencer Brown has it. He's 6'8", I think 312 pounds. So he needs to, I think, strengthen his lower body a little bit and sit for at least a year, maybe two. But the ceiling is extremely high. I think that he is going to be a pretty good player. So I think it's a good fit, and I think it's good value at round 3.
Yeah, I would have had and picked him while you were talking because I agree with you already. He has 34-inch arms, which, that's a quarter of an inch off of what you need. And I don't think that that's that big of a deal to me, obviously. Who knows? Maybe they'll try a little bit of Eastern tactics and try to lengthen his arm. Well, we'll see here. So now looking at our board, we took an edge, a safety, an offensive lineman at 136 here. Let's see the best available players.
Is Palmer there?
Josh Palmer is there at 136.
I'm sold.
All right, fine. You don't have to convince me very
Nope,
much because I love sold. Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer at 136. Man, if I noticed too, because Jordan, you know me. I've been on Josh Palmer train for a little bit, for a minute. And I open up the KC draft guide. What do I see? A My Guy sticker from Kent Swanson right by Josh Palmer. So it makes me feel a little bit better to know that somebody else is seeing what I see in Josh Palmer, that I don't feel crazy. But yeah, big bodied wide receivers, big bodied boys. You know me, I love the big bodied boys.
Man, he's got great body control. He can go up and get the ball. He boxes out. If he can just learn how to run crisp routes, get in and out of his breaks quicker, I think he's going to be a stud. I tweeted out like because in the database he used to be going late, like
Yes.
200s. And I tweeted out and said, I'm going to drop a Josh Palmer scout, and you guys are going to be surprised at how high I graded him because I gave him a 4th round grade. Kent Swanson replies and said I gave him like a late second, early third grade. I was like, Kent, that's definitely your guy. So I think they settled on late 3 in the draft guide or early 4, whatever it was. So he's a my guy too. I really like Josh Palmer a lot.
So what did we get him in the 4th round right there at 136? That's
Yeah.
the 4th round. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So now at 144, looking at the board here, some more good wide receivers still on the board: Sage Surratt, Daz Newsome, Amir Smith, Marset. There's also Demetric Felton. If we're talking about wide receivers, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna bring it up. Kellen Mond is also still there.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of fallen. So at 144, what did we do last week? We took Adi Ogundiji last week, and we did the back-to-back edge with Ogundiji and Ellerson Smith, with taking an edge in the 1st round. I think that makes that a touch not impossible, but not likely. I'll look at interior offensive line. How do you ooh, Drake
There's some
Jackson.
good stuff.
Drake Jackson is there. Sedarius Hutchinson.
We don't have to talk. We don't have to talk anymore, Tucker. We don't have to overthink this one bit.
But do you not want to see, maybe interior defensive line?
Nope.
Tackle?
I guess while you're looking and showing the people who are watching what's going on, I will talk for the people who are listening about Drake Jackson. I think, listen, like he's very undersized. His arms are like 31 inches long. He's like 295 pounds, I think, or 290 maybe. Like he's very undersized, but he's so smart. He works really hard. He's a good athlete. He moves well in space. He gets off the line of scrimmage. His hands engage quickly. He's got good grip strength. He has a strong core. Like he is a perfect draft him and sit him kind of guy where you draft him, sit him behind Austin Blythe for a year, let him take over a year from now. Kendrick Green could be another option later on. Have you drafted Drake Jackson yet?
No. Do you want me to?
Okay. Where's Kendrick Green at?
He's gone.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Kendrick Green is gone. He's shooting up draft boards too. Let me see if I can find him real quick. Because the guy from Illinois, the only picture in our database that we actually have of him is with Josh Matterbaby. Fun fact. Kendrick Green went at 119 to the Vikings. Wow, that is pretty high for him, I think. Good for him, Mill. I think he's a really good offensive lineman. Works with Duke Manyweather. It's another one of those guys. Jack Anderson, another one of those guys that work with Duke Manyweather. But as I was looking around, as you were talking about Drake Jackson, who I'd like as well, I noticed that Kairos Tonga is there for interior offensive line. Yes, I know the Chiefs just signed Jaron Reed to a 1-year deal. Maybe this is a long-term and that gets Derek Nadi out of town, but then you start looking at the roster. This is an interesting conversation we had in the Discord about, okay, you drafted a defensive lineman, really an edge rusher. Who gets cut? How many defensive linemen in total are you taking into the season? It's an interesting conversation to have. And at that point, that room gets pretty crowded.
Yeah, I like Tonga a lot. I mean, I was an OG Kairos Tonga guy. Like I started the whole Tonga time thing. I think he's going to be a good player in the NFL. A limited but good player. Derek Nadi's the same way. He's a limited but good football player. Where does he rank on the overall consensus board?
At 155.
So he won't be there at 175 when we pick again.
It's not likely, no, but he always could. I mean, Teradale Slayton is also there. I know that you scouted him too. He's a 100 and 100 guy. Big boy, if I remember right. He's really big. Yeah. So it could be another one of those options. Bobby Brown III from Texas A&M could be there as well if we wanted to look into your defensive line. That's always interesting. Really, let's look at the edges here. Shaka Toney, Ellerson Smith, still there. There's still some good edge rushers there. Chauncey Golston, I don't know if you know a whole lot about him. I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I've heard his name a lot recently.
Yeah.
So I need to look into him a little bit more. I think that looking at this board here, you look at the tackles, Robert Hainsey, Dan Moore, Adrian Neely, all those are 200 guys going into the 200s of the picks. So Drake Jackson or Jack Anderson here would probably be my pick, even though, you look at the big board and they're at 196. Jack Anderson's at 217. I don't really think it's that much of an overdraft for these guys, though.
I think Drake Jackson's a late third round pick. Like, I'm perfectly fine with him at 144. I think that he's a no-brainer pick.
Let's do it then. Drake Jackson, give us some little interior depth. And you mentioned his arms are a little short, but he's a center, correct? I believe that he was a center in college.
And that's why. I mean, if there's one position where you can be undersized and have short arms, it's at center. I mean, if you're a guard, 31-inch arms really not ideal even for that. So I think he's an eventual starting center in this league, and I think that for the Chiefs who don't need one in 2021 but need one moving forward, he makes perfect sense.
I totally agree. So now let's look at the positions that we've taken. We've taken an edge rusher, a safety, an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, and now an interior offensive lineman. Any position right now you're thinking, oh no, we need to draft it immediately?
I think looking at linebacker is probably worthwhile, and then possibly cornerback. But other than that, I think still anything is up on the board.
Garrett Wallow for TCU is there. Patty Fisher, Riley Cole from South Alabama. Charles Snowden, he'll also be there. We took him at 207 last week. He'll be there. He's a good guy to pick. Grant Stewart, also from Houston, another good guy that could be pick 207 for the Chiefs. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there. Maybe looking at tight end. Matt Bushman's another guy that's probably a 207 pick. Nick Eubanks, have you looked at him at all very much? I don't know a whole lot about Eubanks.
I don't mind Eubanks. Like, I haven't looked a lot at him. Tight end I've been kind of slacking at because I would assume that if the Chiefs don't take a guy like Tommy Tremble, especially after their most recent signing, they seem to have that H-back role kind of figured out. I don't think they're going to go too heavy there, especially with the receiver depth in this year's class. Like, that's what I've been focusing on. But Eubanks, Bushman, they're all kind of late day three in the mix type options there.
So we've taken a safety already. Let's look at cornerbacks here. Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas. Rashad Wildgoose is second, man. I could see him going here. I like that pick, actually, of Wildgoose here. I was looking around at tackle, Dan Moore, Adrian Neely, Jalon Moore, Jalon Moore is a guy that is interesting as well, kind of as a late 200 pick guy. Landon Young, another guy that I think could be really interesting at tackle, trying to build that depth out. Man, let's look at the overall board to see who's there, the top overall. Chuba Hubbard, not Chuba. Josh Matterbebe, Tamorion Terry, Cade Johnson's there, Josh Bledsoe, Adi Ogundiji. I mean, there's some really solid guys here. Still with wide receiver too, TJ Vasher, like I mentioned earlier, Robert Rochelle, who's a cornerback. But what do you think here, Jordan?
I don't really love any of that. Like, even the linebacker depth, I think that like I like Snowden or Buddy Johnson we can wait on for later in the draft. Wild Goose is interesting. That dude's like a free swinger. Like, he takes a lot of chances. He's an aggressive guy. There's a scouting report dropping on him later. I think he's like 5'11-ish, like under 200 pounds. So he's a tweener in terms of nickel and boundary corner. I don't think he's ready or even close to being ready. Injuries, I think he had a couple of injuries. I know for sure he had a shoulder thing. There's a lot of bad, but there's also some good. I think if things work out, he could be an interesting player down the line. It's just a huge risk that I think there are some safer options at 175. But, like, where do you go? Do you go interior offensive line again? I don't think so. Do you go wide receiver again? I don't think so. Do you go tight end maybe? I don't think so. I mean, we're just kind of at a tough spot. Maybe we just go best player available. Read off like 5 or 6 of those top names on the board.
I'm not going to read off Chuba Hubbard's name. Act like I didn't read that name off. Josh Matterbaby, Tamorion Terry, Chris Rump II, Cade Johnson. Man, Josh or Tamorion, I think are really good picks here, and especially they add to the receiver depth. Yeah, it's going to be a crowded room, but it's going to be a talented room, and I think that's really what you want.
And I think the best player between Josh Palmer and Josh Matterbebe, the best Josh will win in terms of that long-term X job. And I think that with Demarcus Robinson there, like, Neither one of these guys overtakes him as the starting X, but that's a lot of dynamic play. I mean, you've got a jump ball 50-50 downfield threat in Josh Palmer. You've got a really dynamic presence in Josh Bouye. You've got Nicole Hardman, he's a great gadget slot player. I mean, he just is what he is at this point. You've got Tyreek Hill, so that's a good dynamic. Demarcus Robinson is your pretty much the only underneath threat at opposite Hill, which kind of scares me a little bit, but unless you go in the first few rounds, you're not getting a guy who can do that anyway. So I'm fine with Bouye, man.
Let's do it. You don't have to convince me with him. We're picking two of my favorite wide receivers in this draft, so I am more than okay with picking Josh Bouye right there. Those are two really big-bodied wide receivers too, something the Chiefs need on the outside, and I really like the selection of both of the Joshes there. And the Chiefs are right again up on the clock at 181. The board hadn't really changed a whole lot. Maybe Wild Goose, you feel a little bit better here. Keith Taylor, possibly. DJ Daniel, Ambry Thomas.
Ambry Thomas, you say?
You like Ambry Thomas. I know you do.
He's my guy. Like, if I could have 10 out of the whole 100, he would definitely be one of those 10. Like, I'm telling you, man, this is a dude where if he would have played in 2020, he would be a late second round pick. Like, I wholeheartedly believe he's that good. He has the size. He's a smart player. I like him in man coverage. He's a physical dude. Like Ambry Thomas, I didn't know he was still on the board. Like, I had no clue because of the peek behind the curtain, guys. I can't see what's going on that board. Tucker's kind of doing a perfect job describing what's going on. So I'm overjoyed. I love Ambry Thomas. Dude, 5'1", Like, come on. You're getting a future potential starting corner at 181. Yes, Ambry Thomas gets multiple yeses and multiple heart eye emojis for that pick.
All right, I'll go ahead and do it. I'm just overjoyed that you got a lot of joy in Ambry Thomas being available. So now we are at 207. The world is our oyster. I'm going to go to the overall board. Man, if I tell you if Tamorrion Terry is still there, picking three wide receivers would be absolutely insane. But if Tamorrion Terry is still there at 207, that's a crime against humanity.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is going to be tough. I don't know.
He left. Thankfully, we would have been faced with a very tough decision. But now we look at the board here. Chris Rumph, the second edge from Duke. I don't even know if that's how you say his name. That's how it's spelled, though. Cade Johnson, wide receiver. Jamin Sherwood from Auburn. Joshua Bledsoe from Missouri. Adi Ogundiji. How is he still around? That is insane. Wow. I've been thrown off. My groove has been thrown off because
I think that's your pick.
Is still here. It has to be, right? I don't know if there's anyone else that compares to Adi Ogundiji on this board.
I've said it 5 times fast. We have a video clip somewhere, and I'm not going to do that here, but I mean, at 207, that's a pretty damn good selection.
Yeah, I just went ahead and picked it because falling through the cracks, guys will fall through the cracks too. That's the thing. So I think the Chiefs will be able to get a guy who falls through the cracks, especially in the first round, because there's been some rumblings about some second round guys going in the first round, and like teams having interest in some second round guys going above the Chiefs in the first round. So we'll see what happens. I think there are some guys that are destined to fall to the Chiefs that are fallen they necessarily shouldn't. So Adi Ogundiji is one of those guys, as you know, if you ever listened to the podcast before, that I absolutely love him, and his versatility is great. He checks all the boxes when it comes to a Spags edge. I think his arms are 34 too, so all that measures out. I think he might be actually be a little light, like a pound or two light. But I mean, man, versatility wins in this league, and he's a versatile guy.
Man, I love this draft. I mean, I'm just going to recap it. I'm going to steal the mic from Tucker.
Do it.
131, Jason Oweh. I think that's a future starter if everything goes right, a future star. Like, I think he has a ton of potential. Richie Grant can do everything. He's an immediate step in and take Dan Sorensen's role. So that's 2 starters in the future. Spencer Brown, I think, especially with Villanueva on a 2-year deal, he's a future starter at tackle. Both of the Joshes, Palmer and Bouye, with Drake Jackson sandwiched in between them, like Ambry Thomas in round 5, and then Adi Ogundiji. Like, there isn't a lot of star power here, in terms of like the sexy 31 pick, like someone falling or whatever. But there's some damn good value here. Like
Yeah.
this is one of those where at the end of the 2021 season, people are going to look back and say, I don't know about this draft class. Brett Veach whiffed, blah, blah, blah. Then at the end of 2022, they're going to say, oh, wow, these guys are breaking out. Then at the end of 2023, they're going to say, dang, this is one of Veach's best pieces of work. And like the hope for 2018 is gone with that.
Mm-hmm.
The hope for 2019 is starting to fade a little bit. I think 2020 is a little bit like that with guys who were injured and just didn't get a huge opportunity. But it takes a couple years to evaluate a draft class. Honestly, it sometimes takes 4, depending on how long you keep those guys. But the longer they stay around, usually the more the team believes in them. And I think that all of these guys could stay for a full contract term.
Yeah, I think so too. All these guys have the potential to be really great pros in this league. Maybe not in their first year, like you said, probably in their second, maybe third or fourth year. That they have the opportunity to be really good pros, but they provide really good depth as of now. That's really what the Chiefs are looking for, right? When
Yeah.
it comes to all these positions, they need depth. We say this all the time. Free agency is where you get better on the starting level, but the draft is where you draft for depth and you draft for the future. You prepare for the future with your team. This draft does a really great job of that. I know that kind of seems like tooting our own horn, but I'm really a big fan of this. I know we took only one offensive tackle, which is very uncharacteristic of us, but Drake Jackson, I think, is a really good guy who could provide depth at the interior level and at guard. You have to remember Lucas Niang is coming back as well. So having Lucas Niang, who maybe eventually shifts off to left tackle, I don't know Niang's arm length off the top of my head. Do you?
I think it's 34 even or 34 and
Hmm.
a half. I'm,
Interesting.
I'm like 99% sure.
I'll have to look that up sometime. But I just thought about that. I was like, oh, I wonder if he even fits
I
the
If you can stall for long enough, I'll do a live
yeah.
lookup on the podcast.
Well, you know that I do the best at stalling because basically this whole podcast is me stalling. But
34 and a
no,
quarter.
yeah, 30. Okay, so that's right on. That
Yeah.
is exactly what he likes. And Spencer Brown is at 34. I don't know if
Whatever.
it's that big of a deal. It is a slippery slope, though, like I talked about with Jim Mora. When you talk about making exceptions to your prototypes,
Yeah.
to what you're looking for, it's a slippery slope. What do you allow? What don't you allow? Spencer Brown is a guy who's pretty athletic too, and I think you mentioned he got a 10 in his RAS score, so
Yeah.
not worried about that at all in terms of athleticism. So Jordan, I think we killed this one. Do you think this is our best draft?
I think in terms of potential future value, this is our best draft. Like we've had some where a guy like Liam Eichenberg, Diami Brown, Jacoby Stevens can step in and play significant roles week one. Things that really the only thing I feel like we're missing in this one is a future Sam linebacker. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that base is roughly 30% anyway, like people have always been saying. So everything else you have potential future starting, um, offensive tackle, center, 2 wide receivers, an edge who has star potential, a safety who has good player potential, a cornerback who could start. I think these guys, some of them need a year. The Chiefs can provide them a year, and I just love it. I think this is really one of our best.
I think so too. And you have to remember the scenario we're drafting around, right? Some people will look at this and be like, oh, how come we didn't take a tackle in round one? Listen, in our scenario, we already had Alejandro Villanueva for 2 years, but you guys already know that because you've been listening all the way through. And we appreciate you guys listening all the way through. Jordan, any final thoughts?
Man, I think if I give any more thoughts, my head's going to explode. That was awesome, man.
Love it. Absolutely love it. 9.0, and we're only getting better. Make sure to tune in next week for 10.0. Jordan will be back with us. And we've only got, I think, 3 more mock drafts after this. We got 10, 11, and 12. So, yep, that'll be 3 left before the NFL draft kicks off on April 29th. Make sure you're following Jordan on Twitter at Footnoted. He's still in the heat of his 100 in 100 series. There's no 20s involved in that, all 100s. He's keeping it 100 with those prospects as well. Really great series. Make sure you go check it out. Pin tweet on his Twitter gives you a thread to every single one he's written already, nearing 80. So almost 20 days until the NFL draft. It's getting close. It's getting excited. I'm getting really excited, getting a little bit more information as we get closer. So make sure you go follow me on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. Tomorrow, I'll be back with Connor Christopherson since we had Jim Moore Jr. on yesterday's podcast. Connor and I's conversation will be on Thursday. Then on Friday, we're going to be doing a Roughing the Mailbag segment. If you have questions, make sure to send them in at footnoted at Tucker D. Franklin, at Connor_DKC. Tweet those at us so we can see them. But tomorrow, Connor will be with me. We're going to be talking about some numbers more or less because Connor, you know him. He's the numbers guy. So until then, I'll talk to you tomorrow.